joined by a very distinguished guest. He has over 25 years of experience working in the financial services sector, including many years as the head of commercial banking for various banks across Asia. He's also a visionary. As early as 2011, while working in China, he commissioned a software project that turned a fleet of 157 ATM machines into a network of lead generation engines that produce over 5,000 new-to-bank leads every month. He is a well-respected banker and he showed early. In 2008, he was awarded the Asian Banker Top 50 Most Promising Young Leaders for bankers under the age of 40. As you can tell, there really is no better person to show how banks are using AI and digital tools to help SME COVID-proof their business. He is currently the CEO of CIMB Singapore and the CEO of Group Commercial Banking, CIMB Bank, Mr. Victor Lee. Welcome, Victor. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
All right, so we'll dive in the interest of time. I'll start asking you questions. For the audience, if you have questions along the way, please enter those questions in the Q&A box. We'll come to that at the end of my questionings. So Victor, CIMB recently won the Best Banking Singapore 2020, among other awards by Global Business Outlook. As a bank with a large SME customer base, what are some of the financing needs you see SME having now?
Yeah, so Shin, I think first, thanks for the very nice introduction. And Shin and I worked together actually back then in China, and you were running the remote banking, if I remember, and you were the main man behind those ATMs who are getting, I think, obsolete today. So what we had then done for ATMs, which were service machines, we actually converted ATMs to become revenue-generating machines, and we were very proud of it back then. And then when you talked about the 40, below 40, today I've already turned 50, so I'm a dinosaur, and you will become a dinosaur soon too. But coming back to the SMEs, I think we were given this Best SME Banking award this year. We are very proud of it, but I think it's about the actions that we have done, very much so this year in response to COVID. And really COVID hit us by surprise. First, I must say that the pandemic was nobody's fault. It wasn't an SME's fault. It wasn't the banks. It was just a virus that, became a pandemic. And banks, just like the governments, needed to respond because there was a social call. There was a need to save the world, essentially. And what better way than to provide relief through fiscal measures, monetary measures from the government supporting the banks. And we, like most banks, reacted and pivoted. And we used a lot of, later on what we'll talk about are the chatbots to reach out to customers. But I think as I tracked really the deep set of the pandemic, at least for ASEAN, really happened in Q2. And we were all very busy, trying to, number one, operate work from home, getting our VPNs up, and engaging. And once we had that, engaging our customers, because everybody was really in a very confused state, right? How do I pay my loans? Hotels used to have 100% occupancy, 80% occupancy. Suddenly, just overnight, over the course of a couple of weeks, occupancy was down to zero. You couldn't pay your interest, you couldn't pay your employees. So everything became reality. And as SMEs, we don't have sometimes plan B. We definitely do not have plan C. And I think as a bank, CIMB, we responded, and we actually came up very quickly with packages to say, hey, principal, interest, let's see how you defer that, right? Because the bank must be a partner, and it is in no interest of any bank to try to pull a line, to get somebody into bankruptcy. It just doesn't work for everybody. Yeah. So I guess we were lucky also in Singapore because the government responded very quickly. Enterprise Singapore government guarantees came out. The banks were more confident, and we were really dishing out. And I think if you recall the Business Times, I think it was reported almost 15 billion was actually dished out with governmental support, and to at least allay some of the immediate fears for the SME, right? So it was cash flow, paying salaries, keeping the lights on, paying rents. Those were the immediate needs, and banks like us responded to that. Yeah. So the financing needs, clearly cash flow just got truncated, and everything, the whole supply chain just got cut off. Yeah. So it was quite scary during that period. And as in any crisis, there's always a lot of fake news out there, lack of information, and how do we get information, real and right and truthful information. And we felt that as a bank, we could step into that role, and later again, we'll talk about a chatbot that we created with you, and then using AI and machine learning, how to be intuitive about that whole customer engagement, customer journey. Yeah. So I guess through the quarter two at the deepest part of the crisis, around the financing needs, around the cash flow, how do I get help from my bank? There was that whole dearth of information overload, or lack of information, or confusing information that was just floating in the system. Yeah.
Well, this is off schedule, but I'm quite intrigued. So you mentioned that CIMB came up with a lot of financing products to help SME during quarter two. Now you and I both work in banks. While you're still working in banks, I work with some banking experience. We all know banks move rather slowly. So what is it that you have done that compelled CIMB during quarter two to move so quickly to roll out new financing schemes to help SME?
So I think I embraced digital quite a little bit, but I think with that problem statement really was, if I rely on people, and banks typically have a lot of people, whether in sales or service, how do I get the right communication through all my frontline troops to be consistent and to be accurate about the information that they can give to their customers, was my biggest challenge there. And then that's where I think with my marketing team, my corporate comms team, and the business guys, we say, hey, maybe a robot, maybe a bot can do a better job at that. And today, even our RMs, our relationship managers, our sales guys are using the bot, as a directory, so that they actually provide accurate information to their customers, who some quarters of the customers, at least still half of the customers, will still want to hear that voice. Yeah.
All right. So now, so we talked about quarter two. Now that we're in quarter four, and knowing these evolving needs of the SME, do you think currently big financial institutions, their solutions and service model are adequate to service this sector in quarter two and moving forward?
So fortunately or unfortunately, I personally believe that given that we only have 3 local banks, the foreign banks here, banks like ours, and some of the other foreign banks actually have a niche to play. We push the envelope a lot more. Today, I think if you talk about supply chain, we are probably the deepest around partnerships, with supply chain operators or platforms, and even with the P2Ps out there. I think in any market you need a lot of competition, and I speak that with experience. Indonesia has hundreds of banks. Malaysia has 9 principal banks. Thailand has a lot more. Singapore has just 3 local banks. So with competition, you actually allow banks to meet more of the needs of various, or what we call sometimes the long tail of the SMEs. Yeah. So I think the foreign banks are giving a bang for the buck to the local banks, but notwithstanding, I think the local banks have also skilled themselves and improved themselves a whole lot more than they were, 5, 10 years ago. Yeah.
Now, speaking of competitions, we also know that Singapore is in the process of awarding digital banking licenses. And so what's our attitude towards digital banks and other non-digital bank fintechs that are competing in the same market as banks, incumbent banks here in Singapore?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. We assess whether we should apply for a virtual bank license. But then very quickly we realized that we already have a bank license. So really what's stopping us, to launch our digital propositions. And today, whether it's the three local banks or any of the bigger foreign banks, every one of us actually do have, whether it's called a digital app or digital propositions around that. Because what's clear, if you look at the last 10 years, branches are closing. Every year, between 10 to 20% of physical branches are getting closed, even across an island in Singapore, right? So do we worry about the virtual banks? As far as us being a niche focused ASEAN bank, we are not. In fact, we embrace it because we have the technology stacks in place. We are offering services to the would-be applicants, right? So we are actually quite excited to hear who the winners are next month, early next month, because we are offering what we call banking as a service. So we have the platforms, we have the integrations that you can play with, whether it's a retail bank, and even more so, especially with the SMEs that are getting their licenses, where we can collaborate and partner together to attack the market.
So do I smell some potential partnership opportunities with these new guys?
Certainly, we hope so. We are still very hopeful. Yeah. So I think sometimes, a bit like you, being small and nimble has its advantages, right? And it's not always being big that is beautiful. Yeah.
Now, speaking about technologies, how has CIMB leveraged digital tools and AI to better serve SME in
So,
Singapore and across ASEAN?
so I think what's clear is that, whether you call it the millennial generation or, the new normal as a result of COVID, where today we are far more digital, our digital throughputs through our apps have gone up way above 30%, through COVID. Next year we're going to launch corporate account opening online, fully online, right? Today, of course, individuals with My Info are already integrated. They can get their current account, savings account, time deposits open online. So really early next year, we have a full gamut of digital proposition. And really, if you look at the millennials, the new SMEs that are coming out through startups and, young people coming out, customers today want it quick, want it fast, and, we really need to be fixated, be paranoid over what I call the customer journey. And more so now than ever. I think in the past, banks being traditional, you come to a branch, take 45 minutes to an hour. I think you remember that, Shinbi, when we were in China, we kept tracking those kind of things. People don't have that patience these days. And you really need to know what they want and give them what they want versus what we want. And I give you an example of U-Trip, for instance, right? Banks had the technology to do multi-currency debit cards, but banks wanted to sell not just a card, but a current account, a time deposit, and a wealth management product. And that's not what the customer really wants sometimes. Sometimes all they just really wanted, like the U-Trip, is just a multi-currency card so that I go to Thailand, I get the best FX rates, and I can, pay using, in this case, a debit, using a debit card, really. So I think more so in the new world, everyone has a smartphone, everyone is fast, everybody expects you to know them, and everybody wants it cheap. And banks need to react to that. And with the barrage of data that we actually are capturing and holding in our warehouse, then the application of AI, machine learning would be key. And that same example with you, when we call on you and we actually turn out a bot within 3 weeks into the COVID, right? When we say, hey, we need to be able to communicate to customers and at the same time through their queries, learn what the questions are coming through and modify and moderate so that we give accurate answers to guide our customers through, the whole COVID information gathering and application for relief and moratorium programs. So we're actually very happy, that you could help us turn around the board in just 3 weeks, right? Yeah. And today we are going into multilingual, we're going to Bahasa, and time to come, a Hokkien chatbot,
right? Cheers to Hokkien chatbot.
Yeah.
All right. So earlier in the conversation, and again, this is off schedule, but earlier in the conversation, Victor, you mentioned about how customers' behavior has changed, how you're working with a different set of customers who are millennials, who are younger, and how have you seen how these SME reacted to these new offerings and tools that you put in place for them?
So two things. I think for the younger crowd, they are more embracing. For the older crowd, the older SMEs, forced by circumstances, forced by COVID, they have gone more digital. So in the past, people would still, die, as we call it, want to sign checks. Today, people are just taking up, internet banking, cash management systems that they can actually move money electronically and safer, and you don't have to handle, potential COVID notes, bank notes. So I think the transformation is almost 180 degrees. Is really day and night now. And I was just kidding to my marketing head, what's really the use of the branch today, right? And our aim eventually is to get the entire branch services into an app, right? So we are totally convinced that the way forward, especially in a very high cost city like Singapore, things needs to be, democratized. Things needs to be really brought down to a level of cost that we can function. Yeah.
Got it. So just for the benefits of audience who are Victor and I talk about Eva, the chatbot, a couple of times. So here at Pandai, what we have done is we actually built a chatbot for CIMB, and this chatbot is called Eva. It was built, like Victor mentioned earlier, it was built during the circuit breaker period, and together we spent all in all about 4 weeks, not 3 weeks, 4 weeks building this board together, which I think has been a record, and partly because I think there was an urgency on both sides to want to get this out into the hands of the customers as soon as possible. So speaking of Eva, I want to congratulate you, Victor, because Eva has recently been named as a top 40 finalist at the Singapore FinTech Award. So curious, what makes Eva different from other chatbots? And what is your plan for Eva moving forward apart from Hokkien chatbot?
Yeah, so I think across the markets, I think Singapore, at least, we are a small city, things, you still can get information, or maybe you get too much information. And that's where I thought, we probably need a chatbot to be able to direct customers to apply, how to apply, and, step by step, in a step-by-step fashion, right? And there is really, just like the government has so many schemes out there, which one is really right for you? And we have so many loan programs, which one is the right program for you? We thought that, right at the beginning of the conversation, the bot can be far more reliable, than a data dictionary, which sometimes the salespeople, can't frantically connect all the dots. Yeah. So that has really worked for us. And in that short period, the 2 months, right, we got almost 3,000 inquiries. I think we really contributed to the society, and allayed a lot of concerns, and got in, I think, 200 applications to loans getting dispersed during that most difficult period. Yeah. So I think it's been used, money well spent, and we really want to do a lot more. So of course, Eva today is just managing a loan product. We're going to move that to other loan products and obviously FX and almost the whole works eventually. So we think that the board can be really powerful in the future.
Mm. Do you consider, do you believe that, the board can perhaps be also used for cross-border transactions or for cross-border business? Is there any possibility of expanding the board to other parts of the CIMB network?
Yeah, so certainly. And in Malaysia, we also they've seen the success of our board in Singapore. They're embracing it. They're also going to roll that out, I think, very soon. But I think we need to be realistic also, right? The board needs to learn. And in initial launch, we were 80% accurate. Today it's already at 93% thereabouts. So we're actually quite happy with the performance. And today, at least, I don't get complaints about my board. I get probably more complaints, from my RMs mis-selling or misquoting or giving misinformation, right?
All right. Oh, excellent. That's good to know. So, uh, are there any learnings to share with the audience in CSMB journey of implementing uh, the chatbot and other digital or AI solutions?
Yeah, so I guess I'm talking to a group. We are all computer literate guys involved in project re-engineering, launching new systems, and the fact of the matter remains that at the initial launch, nothing's going to be perfect. And somebody gave me this quote, right? Perfection is the enemy of good. I think far more important is really get something out, try it, and keep iterating with the startup mentality to get it, to a better state. Through the iterations, right? So I think speed is still key. Be adventurous, try, and hold on to the quote that I started with, which is perfection is the enemy of good, right?
Perfection is enemy of good. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, you're a veterans in commercial banking. Can you advise SME in the audience, and there are some SME in the audience, on how they may improve their access to finance from a commercial bank?
Yeah. So I think in the second or third month of the COVID, in one webinar, I first gave these three advice, which are three Malay words. And if you're Singaporean here, you probably understand the three Malay words. And the first phase was tahan, right? And that's the time. Don't give up. Just tahan. Stay in the game. The second part in phase 2, I called it samula. And in the army, we do a lot of the samulas, right? We keep in our drills, and it allows us to reset, relook our business models, look for areas where you may have to chop off, and look for areas where you should double down on. So tahan, semula, and finally cepat jalan. And I think we are in that phase now of cepat jalan. The vaccine is going to come. Notwithstanding, some needs to be maintained at minus 75 degrees, but the vaccines are coming, and we need to be ready to run and to chase and to jalan. As they always say, the lion that comes out early in the morning when the sun comes up will probably get their prey. So I hope that we have really that kind of mentality. So we have been through the deepest part of COVID. I think we have relooked at our lives, whether individually, as a business, and we are ready to run. So coming back to the SMEs, in some seminars, I always say that, always, whether it's friends and family, if you are really a little startup, or if you have a bank, if you have access because your financials are, starting to look decent, make sure that you have at least 6 months of working capital or 6 months of cash, to survive 6 months. Yeah, I think that's critical. And to say that banks will lend any company out there, whether you're a startup or not, that's not real. right? Because banks do need to take calculated risk, right? Our margins are not high, and so typically banks prefer to lend, let's say, with a credit margin of 2 to 5%, which at 5%, essentially we are saying 1 in 20 survives, right? So commercial lending or bank lending is really on the conservatism, right? But if you are a startup with a great idea, then you really look at VCs to really, or whether you call them angel investors, to take a punt, right? Because for them, their payouts are, or their IRR, internal rate of return, will be much higher. So really, we need to be very clear if you need equity financing or you need bank financing. And in bank financing, typically it is for customers, who have regular cash flow, who have something where they can discount a receivable, where they are predictable rather, right? Because banks don't normally charge very high in their margins. So coming back, liquidity is key. 6 months of cash flow, and then really keeping your bureau clean, because banks also look at who are the promoters. We need to be comfortable that your own personal financial prudence is a reflection of your company's financial prudence. Yeah. So and that's where I think banks don't want to get into sticky situations of bankruptcy and all sorts of all those kind of things. We really want to grow with the customer, build strong long-term relationships, and that's, I think, the mantra for most banks. Yeah.
So if you're SME owners, remember, number one, to pay your bills, and number two, to make sure your business is profitable. Am I right to say that?
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be charged a hefty rate. Payday loans. I mean, in China, we're doing payday loans at 2% per day. That's over 1,000% a year. That's not what I think. No business can actually survive being charged so high.
Oh yeah, that's crazy rate. So, so Victor, you mentioned earlier that it will be commercial lending is viewed on the side of being conservative. So probably startups are probably not the right profile for commercial lending. But what about, how do you feel, or how does the bank feel about working with startup, not necessarily as a not necessarily as a lender, but as a customers. So like, in the case of us, working with a couple of years old fintech startup. What's your thoughts with working with SME or startup in general?
Yeah, so I'm a true believer of partnerships and collaboration, but having said that, then the question is really, our partners, are they enterprise grade, right? And to what extent they need to be enterprise grade? I think that's a key consideration. Where we partner with you, you're delivering a board for us. We also have a lot of collaborations with HR software like HR Easily, accounting. We also have at least 3 partners out there. We even have e-commerce partnerships, right? So we do a lot of cross referrals, and I think going forward, everybody needs to be specialized in their areas. And everybody's trying to create their own ecosystem. Singtel has their own ecosystem. SingPower has their ecosystem. Even Singapore Airlines have their own ecosystem. Then the question is that when you have like-minded people that really truly embraces partnership, I think the power of partnership, can allow us to create huge exponential growth in our respective businesses. Yeah. So I think no bank or no organization should really try to do everything on their own. Then it becomes very me too and subscale, and it may not be very focused on the customer.
Right. So in other words, CIMB is open for business with SME and startups.
Yeah. So I think if you do search on CIMB, in Malaysia, I have a link up with the telco, Axiata Digital. So we are really tapping onto a lot of ecosystems. We also have a joint venture in Malaysia with Alibaba. We have the biggest e-wallet in Malaysia called Touch 'n Go. Yeah, and we're even prepared to disintermediate ourselves, because the potential of digital is huge. So the e-wallet can easily become and evolve into a bank, and we're willing to take, calculated bets around it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, for the audience, I'm actually dipping into the Q&A submitted by questions from the audience. So that questions, how does CIMB feel about working with SMEs? Are actually the first question.
So just before that, maybe I just want to close up one item on the application of AI in banking, and I think that's important because I think there could be friends out there listening in. What is AI for a bank all about, right? And I think there are really three things. One, facial recognition. That's going to be huge. That's going to be a very, very big market. I think China is leading that in my own view. Two, credit scoring with the amount of data, AI, machine learning. How do we lend more smartly? I think that's going to be a key area of focus for AI. And I think finally, third, it's really the conversational AI. And that's where I think your bot comes in. Today is a text bot, the day will come where, we got to get into voice bots and really that will revolutionize. I think AI in these three areas will revolutionize banking for us.
Right, got it. So we have time. We have about 5 more minutes time for some more Q&A. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of questions from the audience. So this is an interesting one. I guess I'll combine. No, I think I have time to separate that. So question is, in the digital sphere, AI is constantly evolving. How do you envision EVA in the future, apart from being bilingual, and how can it help SME? So I'm guessing the question is, apart from it being able to speak English and Hokkien.
So I think I faced a dilemma at the beginning, and maybe some of professional managers and professional leaders always think sometimes way too big, and I think sometimes it's just taking that small step forward, right? Of course, we can say that let's have our bot become a service bot that would be able to serve every single service needs of our customer when they call in. And today, for instance, if you call into the bots at either one of the three telcos or some of the big banks here, and if you envision the bot to be able to answer every single query out there today, I think you'll be quite disappointed, as I had been disappointed before calling and trying to ask A and the bot keeps answering B. So I think we take an approach, baby steps, and we said, okay, the COVID bot was quite narrow. It helped the salespeople, it helped the customers answer COVID question, gave customers specific loan packages that was available that the government was supporting, and help them through the application process. So it's really a query pre-sales bot for SME loan products. So we kept it rather narrow. And I must say that, it has won quite resounding success. We won the best bot. We are one of the finalists in the FinTech Festival coming up. So my advice is really keep it narrow and then slowly expand it out, versus trying to be ambitious to say that you want to do all sorts of service inquiries at the onset of go, right? And that would take you easily 2 to 3 years with a launch and a lot of misguided expectations probably as an output.
Yeah, and by then the technology probably has moved on.
Yeah.
So I have another question here from Annie Pang. So it goes like this: How do you ensure that cybersecurity, privacy, business continuity comply with TRM? I'm not sure what is TRM, and still maintain customer service via chatbot with AI and
so technology risk management. So I think banking is a bit complicated because we have a whole set of requirements, rightfully so, because we are the custodian of customers' data. So there are lots of firewalls, there are a lot of pen tests. We use a lot of the firms out there, ethical hackers and all this to protect our data. But in the case of, I think, Shinwi, the bot that you created, to a great extent, it wasn't touching our customers' data, right? It was more a query, it was pre-sales, it was guiding the customers through an application process before it came to the bank. Yeah, so that's again, for us, trying to do it bite-sized, and being very clear in our instance on the problem statement. So we didn't have so much of the TRM, because we were just one. If you break it down, providing a service of products that was offered jointly by the bank, under sort of guaranteed by the government. Yeah, so we didn't have that problem, right? If you are a startup wanting to get into our data lakes and the data systems, then it's going to be very challenging. Number one, if you are a startup and you are not, I think as I discussed earlier, enterprise grade. Because I think for banks to collaborate with startups, you need to be enterprise grade if you really want to get into our data lakes.
Absolutely. I mean, banks are custodians of customers' data, so it's important that your IT.
Yeah. And that's the same example in the UK, right? And in the UK, we have open banking, supposed to have taken off, but it hasn't taken off really in a big way in UK, right? And we say it's open banking, and I think one of the biggest problem is that the startups that the banks at Barclays and all couldn't work with the startups they didn't reach a level where they were enterprise grade that gave banks the confidence, to allow that straight through API.
Got it. Now I have 1 minute before time is up, so I just want to remind the audience. So Victor and I have been talking about this chatbot Eva, and you can see from your screen that there is a QR code. So if you want to experience what Eva is all about, and if you're SME customers, you want to apply for a loan, or you just want to find out more about government-assisted financing schemes, you can scan this QR code and talk to Eva. Now, finally, one final question from the audience. This is a simple one. Is Eva integrated with WhatsApp to respond to customers' queries?
Yeah, when are we going to do that, should we? So the intent is to link it up with Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, and I'm actually waiting for him to tell us when.
We'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, so the intent is to do that. I think we need to really embrace, all sorts of technology, but more important, really what the customer wants. And today in Singapore, it's really honestly WhatsApp. In another country, it could be Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn even. Yeah.
All right. So with that, I think we have come to the end of this.
So if I just do one ad, if I can ask everybody to, follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and we also actually run regular podcasts, which I think can be useful to uplift our spirits.
Absolutely, and for audience, this is all shown on your screen right now. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. So CIMB is quite hip now. You're also on Instagram and Spotify. So so there's all these channels for which you can find useful information about commercial lending and others CIMB related news. I think before we go, I think Camilla may want to step in and talk about the next event and the feedback. I want to take this opportunity to thank Victor for coming, for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I certainly learned a lot, and I believe many in the audience have benefited from this talk. So once again, Thank you very much, Victor.
No, my pleasure. And hopefully, we have not seen each other face to face for the last, 9 months?
I think so.
Looking forward to that.
And for beer.
All right. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Victor. All right. Thank you, Shane. Okay, so before you go, we would like you to actually scan the QR code on the feedback. Let me see. Oh dear, can I share screen now? Okay, sure. So there's this QR code here. So we'd like to invite all of you to share with us your feedback. Okay, so this is a QR code, and then shortly I'll be sharing with you and our upcoming events for SCS. So hopefully, yeah, most of you can share with us like what sort of events you like AI chapter to organize, in the upcoming future, webinars, and hopefully we'll have some physical site visits, which we actually have been planning, but somehow it's not materialized. Okay, so please help us to scan the QR code and share with us your feedback. And let me see, I'll be sharing with you another screen on the okay, can you just see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So, okay, good. Okay, so this is basically the upcoming event that organized by SCS. Is on AI ethics and governance. So you can scan the QR code and join us. All of you are welcome on the 17th of December and 18th December, 10:30. Okay, there are two different timings. On 17th December is 4 p.m. while 18th December is at 10:30. So if you have some time, do scan the QR code, join us on either of the 2 days, and then do visit our SCS website, scs.org.sg, to find out more about our upcoming events. Okay, so I think that's about the end of the session. I'll just leave this slide on for another 1 minute or so. Then after you have registered for it, then we look forward to seeing you again on the 17th of December. All right, thanks Shane, and thanks Andre, and thanks to Victor as well. Okay, we hope you had a good session. Thanks Shinvi so much for organizing this fireside on our behalf of the AI chapter. Thanks everyone, to have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.